Wow, it's actually a full house. Awesome. Uh, Thank you so much for coming. I believe that everyone over here has 2018.2 and have the Unity project with them. There are a few of them who came a little late. We'll catch up. But I want to begin because we have limited time, and the next workshop starts at 1 o'clock, and we'll all be kicked out unless you are part of that session. First of all, a big thank you for everyone for being here. This is exciting time for film and animation inside Unity because we are in the crux of creating this kind of like real-time revolution. How many of you were at the keynote yesterday? All right, so you saw what we did with film and animation with Disney. If I see that there are a few people who did not raise their hands, so for their benefit, I'll just show them what the short film itself was all about that Disney made. Also, I'd like to have a special mention to the women from Afghanistan who are here. So thank you so much for being here. Rest of them, you're also special, but you know, whatever. So I'll just play there were 3 short films or a television series made by Disney based on the Big Hero 6 movie. And they then use the same IP or intellectual property to then make a series of television shorts. And out of that, just as to begin working with Unity and Disney just said, let's just make 3 short films to start with, and then we'll move on to the next ones once we're comfortable with it. And one of them is this Baymax Dreams, which features the evil sheep from yesterday.
All right, Baymax, I wrote a program that'll help clear junk data from your memory while you charge. Let's try it.
I do not require a recharge.
Just think of it as a quick nap. Close your eyes. Maybe try counting some sheep or something.
Count sheep? I see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500.
Launching junk data protocol.
Analyzing data. Analyzed. Junk data found. Delete. Why are you saving this junk data? Then Hero must also be junk data.
This is my memory bank. My memories of Hero.
Junk Hero data found. Delete!
Oh dear.
Why are you saving this junk data?
Hero is my friend.
Friend? Analyzing data. Friendship is necessary?
Yes,
Then Hero is not junk data.
he is not.
I would like to learn more about friendship.
I suggest you make a friend.
Okay, let's see how my new program ran. Wait, it rewrote itself?
Yes, Hero, because you are not junk data. You are my friend.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Hello, I am...
So, thank you. Cool. Clear that you like it. So when we worked on this project, there was a lot of people who worked with Disney on it, and it was also a kind of a new experience for us too, because prior to that, I'm sure you've all seen the Adam series and you know some of the Book of the Dead that we did, and all of that was made by internal Unity folks. So we knew our stuff. But when you're working with Disney, it's a completely new ballgame. They've been animators for like 100 years now, or more than that, and they know how animation works, and to speak the same grammar and to modify the tools in order to fit their pipeline was very interesting. And more importantly, there was a lot of learnings that came out of this experience that we had making Baymax. And of course, I am Arvind Neelakantan. I am a technology evangelist, and one of my job is to get all of this data, learn how things were done with Disney and Unity, and then spread that knowledge, which is what I'm doing right now. So we have this project which I asked you to download earlier, which is the Film Samples project. It is, of course, we couldn't be using Baymax because Disney would not be happy. So they would. So we used Adam character instead, replaced it with that, and then created a sequence using Adam, using the exact way in which Baymax itself was constructed. Now, of course, making the entirety of Baymax will take you more than just 2 hours or 3 hours that we have. So we are going to consolidate it, and then we are going to, and I'm going to show you what are all the things that we are going to be doing today at the workshop. So let me move this mic here so I can see I can play with it. All right, so I'm going to, first of all, the way I want to structure this workshop is quite straightforward. I am going to do something on the screen, and then while I'm doing it, you can look at what I'm doing, and then I'll give you time to redo what I'm doing. So that way, you're not just clicking buttons, but instead you're actually following along and you're doing things by yourself. And it's a more effective way of learning, and that's called learning cycles. All right, so the very first time, so all look at how I'm opening the project. I'm sure a lot of you have opened the project. When you open up the project, it just says new Unity project. I'll just open that up. I'll just take like a few seconds. And when the very first time when you open up the project, you must have all have seen this pop-up, like a giant pop-up there, giant project pop-up, where it says Unity Film Sample Project, and how the instructions on how to load it and whatnot. This essentially, because of the way we learned from Disney, where every department, like the lighting department, the post-processing department, the animation department, the camera, every one of them were working in parallel, but they were all working in separate scenes. So to begin with, when you click on Load Film Master Template, that will essentially load the scene with a bunch of elements already set up for you, and we'll try to recreate these elements. Now, I'll just walk you through some of the things that we'll be doing today. We'll be learning how to block using Unity. How many of you are completely new to film and have never done anything with it? No, film as in even animation. Film animation, new folks here. All right, so blocking inside, when you say blocking, you're essentially not making the animation or making a film, you're just creating blocks or animatics as it's called, where you're just saying my character is going to be at this spot at time 0, and then is going to be moving to another spot at time 7, and it's just going to be animating between those two. And then you're just testing out the timing. You're not really animating, you're not doing anything, you're just blocking out the shot. And then I'll also be talking about how we are going to be creating animations inside Unity. Then I'll talk to you about timeline and how control track works, and that's essentially about how you're going to be editing inside Unity. I'll talk to you about cameras using the Cinemachine plugin. And then I'll also talk to you about lighting, and then we'll talk about how multi-scene workflows work, exactly like how Baymax was working. And then we'll also be talking about post-processing and anything else that you want to be talking about specifically. You can just raise your hand and ask me, and then we'll answer that question. So first things, I'm just going to walk you through what this initial project looks like. So in this scene, there is a exterior outpost. If you have seen the Adam movies, you must have Neil Blomkamp, who is the director of District 9 and Chappie and whatnot. He created a series using the Adam character, and this shot contains a outpost and a skybox. It has some nice lighting, and if I select the timeline, I'm going to select the master timeline in here. By the way, you can all see the screen well. If you cannot, I'll just, okay. While they're doing it, so this is I'm just selecting the master timeline from my timeline window. Now, when you select, so the giant pop-up that shows up earlier, right? You can also open it back. So you can go to Tools, and if you click on the About Film Project, Sample Project, that will open up again. Now, this is good, very good. You can open up the About Film Sample Project, and you can open this up again. Now, this is the layout that a lot of animators prefer, and we have seen that while working with Disney. So you have the scene on the left-hand side, then you have the game view, which is your final output of whatever that you're going to be getting out of Unity, and then you have your hierarchy over here, your project window, and then the inspector. At the very bottom, you have the timeline. So we call this the animation layout, and this is what we'll all be working off of today. So in the timeline, I'm going to select the master timeline. The master timeline contains a render output that we'll be talking about and that is how you're going to be recording the film that you're going to be making out of Unity and then putting it inside, having it rendered it as an image sequence on an MP4 or whatnot. If I open up shots, you'll notice that each of this has a separate shot in there, which is what is called a control track. Now the control track has controls other timelines. So if I double click on, let's say, one of those control tracks, I can go in it, and you'll notice that each of this has a separate track, and I'll show you what our final movie is going to look like. So if I click play, can we just switch off? It's too bright. Can we just switch? We can switch off the lights. It's okay. No one needs to see my face. Yeah. Yeah, great. No, this is good. This is very good. This is very good. That's fine. You just need to concentrate over there. You don't need to see my face. Yeah. So over here, you have, so if I click play, the play button is right here. Right here. So if I click on play, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, I have Adam walking in a very tired fashion, moving up, and then the camera zooms, changes focus, and then goes on to the guard. And that's the entire sequence. And then there's also a depth of field effect right there. You'll notice that each of these elements are not are organized by what we call beats. What does a beat mean? In a beat, you're essentially having the entire sequence played, and then you're changing the camera, changing the lighting based on whatever timing that you feel like, which was not how you traditionally work when you're making film. Where in making films, because of the render cost, you're already kind of blocking out the shots and then figuring out what they need to be even before visualizing what they would be looking like, and that's something that will be changing. That's one of the workflow that will be changing. There are 3 beats in here. So there's beat 1, which just has this guy just putting a salam, and then you have a second beat that is right here. I can double click in it and I can go in there, which is just Adam walking towards the outpost. And then the last beat is Adam just walking into the outpost, just like that. And each of this beat has cameras, where you can have separate camera sections, and then you also have characters, which are also right there, which are all the characters that we'll be using. So that's pretty much what this is. There is also and you'll notice that there are 4 scenes that have loaded on the hierarchy. You have the lighting, which is a separate scene. So if I in fact unload that scene, you'll notice that lighting has all gone. So I have to reload it. Load that scene, and you'll notice that lights have shown up. And similarly, the sets, which is the outpost and everything else, is part of the separate scene. So the set making department can work on a separate scene. And then you have a timeline, which is where you have all of your characters and your movements and whatnot, which also includes your cameras, because cameras are also being animated. So that is how we have the scene set up. Because we want to load all of these scenes together, I wrote a very simple script over here. So if I go to under scenes, film sample V1, if I click on this asset, This asset will, when I select that asset, that will automatically, if I click on the load full workflow, that will automatically open up all of those 4 scenes set up for me. Rather than me dragging one scene at a time at the hierarchy, I can load all the scenes together. And then what else? So this lighting also contains some post-processing. So if I go to scene settings in my lighting, you'll notice that there is a volume, which I'll talk to you about in just a bit. The volume is what contains the details about the skybox and the shadows and whatnot. And then I also have a post volume, and the post volume contains the post-processing stack. So it has my motion blur, grain, ambient occlusion, and whatnot. So that is the scene we'll be working off of. So we'll be recreating this middle beat where Adam is walking towards this outpost, and we have a nice change in camera, depth of field is changing, and this is the beat that we'll be recreating. So that's how the entirety of the film project works. All right, so start from scratch. What I'll do is I will open up under assets, scenes. If I click on empty series 001 scene loader, and by the way, from starting now, you can kind of follow what I'm doing. Just follow it on your computer. So I'm going to click on scenes, empty series, and I am going to click on load full workflow. When I select that load full workflow, it's going to have the same 4 scenes, main, timeline, episode, set, and lighting, but it really contains nothing. It's just like placeholder objects, just empty game objects that contain nothing. It just contains, under the episode set, it contains a cube and a plane, which we will be deleting in just a bit, just to show that that exists. So can you please do that part? We'll just open up the empty scene, and then we'll move on to the next cycle starting here. All right, so there's a couple of people who have a little bit of problem opening it, but I'll just move on to the next step. I think everyone has opened it up, correct? Anyone who has trouble, let me know. What is it? Yes, good question. Can we switch off the lights, please? I don't need the lights. Yeah, this is great. Just keep it like that. Yes. Yeah, this is fine. I don't need the video, because, or if they're taking the video, just take that screen. That's all you need. So the question is, how do you set the layout? Dude, I don't need the light. I don't need the light. Can you switch off the lights? Just switch it off. Yeah, fantastic. So how do you set up the layout? On the top right corner, near layers, there is a layout option in here. You can set any kind of layout you want in here. So if let's say I like a separate, let's say I like the hierarchy to be here, for example, I can just drag and drop that window in here, dock it, and I can just save that layout, and that will be the layout that you prefer, and that's what you will have. So that's how you have layout. All right, so now we have that project open, the empty project open, and this is exactly the same thing. One more thing I kind of forgot to mention earlier is this is using what is called the high definition render pipeline. So if I go to edit, project settings, graphics, you'll notice that this is using the film template HD, which is just the vanilla render pipeline that you get by downloading it from the package manager. How do you go to the package manager? If I go to Window, Package Manager, and in there you can just download the high definition render pipeline from there, and it's free, and and then your project will be set up for high definition render pipeline. So we have that, and so I have that set up. So we have the empty project in there. Starting first, I'm just going to delete this cube and the plane because I don't need that. I'm going to delete that. Once I delete the cube and the plane, under my project window, I had a modeler make the exterior post for me, which was just not animated or anything. It was just a placeholder. In fact, one of the things that you could also be doing is go to your asset store and just get a placeholder asset just for the sake of blocking out the shots. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll be blocking out the shot starting right now. So I'm going to go in here and under, if I just search for exterior outpost, which is under, not there, sets. So assets, content, sets, exterior outpost. I have a prefab in here called ext outpost underscore set. I'm going to drag that ext outpost set into my 001 episode set, because that's where I want all of my sets to be. So if I go back in here, you'll notice that I have a nice little set in here. Now you'll notice that this set is already lit up. During my blocking stage, I don't really care about lighting yet. I really only care about just the sets. You can turn off the lighting by going to your scene window, and there is a light option that just shows up, and that's only in the scene window. You can toggle it off. If I toggle it off, you'll notice that the lights only in the scene view have disappeared, and it's fantastic for doing a lot of blocking inside your scene. What else? This also contains, the empty project also contains just a single beat. If I go to the master timeline, it'll just open up the single beat, and if I double click inside it, there's really nothing in there. It's just the empty timeline. I just put it in there just for the sake of it. What else? So we're talking about blocking, right? So I'm going to select. There are 3 characters, and in addition to the set, I also want to drag in 3 characters inside my scene. So if I go into assets, characters, I have 3 characters in there. There's Adam, there is the Traption Guard, and the Wasp. So I'm going to drag Adam, and my characters are going to be living inside the timeline scene. Sorry, my mouse keeps slipping down again and again. It's kind of annoying. All right. So under my timeline, I'm just going to go drop my characters under this empty characters game object. There's no reason why you want to drop it in there, but it's just good practice to have your characters under the same root. So I'm going to drag my Adam character into my characters. I'm going to drag the Traption Guard into the characters game object. I'm going to drag Wasp into my characters thing. Now you'll notice that all 3 now appear under my scene or in my scene. Of course, they're all in the wrong position, so we need to move them to the right position. We're just blocking out the shots right now. So I'm going to select this drop down, go to beat 01, and it says example of a nested timeline. I'm going to change that name by clicking on it once, and I'm going to change it to characters. All right, so I have the characters in here, and I can start blocking by animating the characters right inside Unity. So I'm going to drag Adam, Traption Guard, and the Wasp from the hierarchy, not from the project window, from the hierarchy, just multi-select them. Now you'll notice something is also a little annoying. As soon as I select another character, my timeline focus disappears. So to avoid that problem, all I do is I select beat 01, and there is a lock icon in here. So I'm going to select that lock icon, and that will now lock that window. So whatever else I select, my timeline will stay there. So I'm going to drag Adam, Traption Guard, Wasp, drag all 3 of them into my timeline. As soon as I drop those 3 characters in there, it will say what kind of timeline track should I be creating. So in this case, I should be creating an animation track. So I'm going to select animation track. And now you'll notice on the animation track, there are 3 tracks that got created. One is each of them for each separate character. So one for Adam, one for the Traption Guard, and one for the Wasp. Okay, so now it's time to start blocking out or creating animations. So you'll notice that this has a nice red button. That's the record button. So I'm going to click on the record button of Adam. So on Adam, I'm just going to select record. The record button will keyframe any movement that I make inside my scene. So if I select record, I can now move Adam. I can move Adam up. And we wanted that one shot where Adam is moving towards the outpost. So I'll just move him all the way to the front. Kind of place him right there. Of course, he's facing the wrong direction. Now, as soon as I click record, you can see that the timeline now says recording. Additionally, any movement I make in the inspector window, you'll notice that it is now red or pink, like my t-shirt, and you can move it, and that means that is getting recorded. Of course, Adam is facing the wrong direction, so we will also rotate him, move him that way. Actually, is change the y-axis. Y, if you want to be more accurate, I'm just going to change the y to be 180 because that is the direction that he's facing. All right, so that's his first keyframe. Now, when you're working with beats, you typically want to be working with time. So currently in the timeline, these are all in frames. So if you want to be selecting it in, moving it in time, I can go to the gear button in here, select seconds, and that will then convert this timeline into seconds. So I can then scrub on the top of the timeline, and they say I want to like have 8 seconds. In my head, I'm just saying, okay, the Adam takes like 8 seconds to move from one place to another. I'm just going to move him up there, move Adam to kind of here. So now what happens is I can stop recording, and you'll notice that there are 2 keyframes that got created, one keyframe over here, another keyframe here, and timeline will automatically tween that for you. So you'll have Adam moving from one place to another. Before we move on to the next cycle, one last thing I also want to do is just a very simple step. I'm going to do the same thing for the traption guard because traption guard says salute. So I'll click record on the traption guard, select the traption guard on my hierarchy, move him up here so that he stands next to, next to the post. We move up here. I say, okay, this is where I want my traption guard to stand, and of course he's going to be standing there till the end. You can also, if I select the traption guard, so you don't want the traption guard to move at that point of time. So rather than, how do I then create a keyframe? You can also right-click in the inspector, and you can click on this button which says Add Key, and that will then add a keyframe in there too. So I can click record. Of course, you won't see any movement in the traption guard, but this is what our scene looks like. We have a traption guard in there. I click on this play button. By the way, you'd never have to click on this play button till the very, very end. You never want to compile it. You can just do everything inside the timeline. So I'm going to select this play button that is there in the timeline. And you'll notice that Adam is now walking towards that outpost, and that's how I'm blocking. That's how I'm kind of creating my beats. So that's this cycle. So I'll just go ahead and do it. And we'll try to solve the problem of people not able to open up the project. Yes. Questions? He's actually pretty okay. But if there is a little bit of a jerkiness, you can always select this graph option, and that will tell you, and you can see how there's a little bit of jerkiness in there. You can always smooth it out. So this is all completely editable. You can say how much editing that needs to be, how much is going to be moving in the x-axis, y-axis, and rotation and whatnot. So you can always select that too. Yep.
And what if my animation already has root motion then?
We'll do that next. Yep. So one of the things with just so everyone knows, the HD render pipeline requires, actually even when you run a fairly basic project, it's better to have some kind of graphic card, especially when you're running HD render pipeline. A couple of them did not have a graphic card, so that's why you're probably not seeing it, but you do need a if your computer, my benchmark for running this project is if your computer can run Maya, it'll run this project no problem. So that's my benchmark. All right, so we'll continue moving. There are a few people who are a little behind, but we'll catch them up because we're just running out of time. All right, so we'll move on. So the next thing that I want to be doing is get these characters in. All right, so I have these. I have this character. The next thing that I want to be doing is animating using my animating or start using my camera system. If you are having trouble, I think it's better that you look at what I'm doing. Otherwise, it's going to take a little bit of time. Right there. All right. So the next thing that we want to be doing is working with the camera system. Now, in Unity, there is a really, really powerful and robust camera called Cinemachine. Now, Cinemachine is a procedural camera system. So it's similar to how you would have like a real life camera person or cameraman, where you're going to tell him or her that look at a certain character, follow the certain character, move move the camera maybe 10 paces behind the character, and maybe have a little bit of camera shake because you have a handheld camera and whatnot. So it's kind of like the grammar of how you would tell a camera person on how to use the camera is how Cinemachine also operates. So I'm going to add cameras into my scene, and we'll start working on how that looks like. So under my timeline scene, I have a cameras game object. Under that, I have a sample Cinemachine camera. Now, if I select that. Now, Cinemachine, you can have like literally thousands of Cinemachine cameras in your scene, and it'll have like no overhead at all, because the way Cinemachine works, and I'll demonstrate to you how that works in just a bit, is that it is just going to create placeholder objects and just move the camera between those placeholder objects, which are otherwise called virtual cameras. So all of these virtual cameras will be just a placeholder objects placed inside your scene, giving information to your main camera on how the camera should be operating. And when you move from one virtual camera to another, the main camera is the only one that just gets passed around from one virtual camera to another, kind of like a relay race. So I'll show you how that works. So on the sample Cinemachine camera, I'm just going to rename it by clicking it once and calling it follow cam, or I'll call it follow cam 1. Why not? 1. And the follow cam 1, when I select that, this is already a Cinemachine virtual camera. In order to create a new virtual camera, you can go to Cinemachine, create virtual camera. It does the same thing. Now, when I have this virtual camera selected, if I select the camera and then go to my scene view, you'll notice that the camera is looking at somewhere in space. Which is not what you want. Instead, you want the camera to be following Adam while he's walking towards the outpost. That's kind of that's the shot that we want to be composing. So I'm going to select the follow cam, and I am going to go to this option here called follow and look at. Now, as with any object that you're going to be, or any character that you're going to be animating or rigging, more like, not animating, any character that you're rigging inside Maya, Adam was also rigged inside Maya. When I open up or expand the Adam character, there's like freaking 100 bones in there. And I specifically want my camera to be following the pelvis of Adam and then looking at the head of Adam. So every time I want to change that, I have to drill down to like a lot of bones and joints. So instead of that, an easy way of referencing those characters just once and then holding on to the reference is again using Cinemachine target. So under camera targets, I'm going to create 3 empty game objects. I'm going to right click, create an empty game object. I'm going to call this Adam follow. I'm going to duplicate it by Control-D or right-clicking and duplicate. I'm going to call this Adam look. And I'm going to right-click, duplicate, and then call this guard spelling of God, God, look. So these three game objects is now going to hold a reference to the joints of those, the nested joints that's there inside my characters. And how do I add that? I'm going to multi-select all of those things. I'm going to click on Add a Component. And I'm going to search for Cinemachine, and Cinemachine, and there is a option here in the component called Cinemachine Target Group. Now, if you want to go there manually, you can click on Add Component. Scroll down. There should be Cinemachine, and there is Cinemachine Target Group. I'm going to select that. Of course, it'll say multi-object editing not supported, so I'll select one object at a time. So I'm going to have Adam follow. Cinemachine Target Group is now able to hold on to a particular joint's reference. And you can hold on to the reference by clicking on this plus button. And now it'll ask, what is the transform I want to hold a reference to? So I can now, and this is just a one-time thing. So I'm going to now go down to, dive down into my Adam character, go down into my joints. So there's a joint group in there. So I want to follow the pelvis, right? So I'm going to go, where is my pelvis? There is my pelvis. So I have a pelvis joint in there. So I'll select Adam, drag and drop that pelvis joint into my Cinemachine target group. So now that is going to hold on to the reference of that joint the entire time. Similarly, for Adam look, which is another game object, I want to look at Adam. So we want to look at Adam's head. So I will scroll down, spine, under neck 2. Where is this head? There is head. So I'm going to first click on this plus button, and then drag and drop that head in there. And the head, by the way, is right here. So I want to follow Adam's, there you go. Follow Adam's head, which is right here. All right, so we have the Adam follow and the Adam look, and similarly for the guard, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm going to go under traction guard, joint, pelvis joint, spine. That should be a song. And go down to neck, head joint. So I'm going to select the guard look, go to Cinemachine target group, add to the list, drag and drop the head joint of the traction guard in there. So now what happens is, now I have this camera in there, right? The follow cam 1. I can now tell this follow cam 1 to follow Adam. So I'm going to drag Adam follow, which is the camera target, which holds a reference to the joint, drag that, drop it into my follow. Notice that my camera is, I don't know where that is looking at. Oh, it's right in there. So when Adam is moving, you'll notice that the camera is always following Adam. But my cameraman is very dumb because he's just following. You'd ask me to follow Adam, I'm going to follow Adam. But we never told him to look at Adam all the time. So he's like looking at a completely different direction. So by selecting my follow cam, I'm going to drag Adam look, which holds a reference to Adam's head, drag and drop that into my look at. So now you'll notice that my camera is always following Adam and always also looking at Adam the entire time. Of course, I don't want the camera to be in here. I want the camera to be behind Adam. So I'm going to select that follow cam, and under body of that follow cam, I have a few offsets. There is 0. The offset is is how far and how behind the character needs to be. So I can select that offset to be about, I can actually move it. So I'll just say, okay, on the X, I want him to be right there. Actually, on the Z is minus 10. So I'll move it behind. So it's always behind. And this is, of course, personal preference. So make that 0, move the Y down just a bit so it's kind of looking right there. So right now, my camera is always following Adam from behind. And regardless of whether I move Adam or just like the keynote that you saw yesterday, I can move Adam, I can decide that I don't want, that is not the shot I want. The camera will always be looking at the joint regardless of what happens. I think there was a lot of things I just did, so I'll just quickly recap what I just did because it's quite a few things. First things, Under cameras, I renamed this camera that used to exist to follow cam 1, which is a virtual camera of Cinemachine. Because of the virtual camera requiring a follow and a look at, rather than diving deep down into every joint of each characters because they are complex rigs, I created under camera targets 3 empty game objects. I multi-selected the 3 empty game objects and added this component called Cinemachine target group. Under each Cinemachine target group, all I did was just dragged and dropped the reference to the joint that I want the camera to be following. And on the follow cam, I just dragged the character that I want to be following, the joints I want to be following rather. So on the follow, I dragged and dropped Adam follow. And on the look at, I dragged and dropped Adam look. And on the body's follow offset, I changed the offset so that the camera is not in front of Adam. Instead, he's more at the behind Adam. So that's what we did this step. So I'll let you folks do it. Anytime, if anytime you think I'm going too fast or there's a lot of information to carry on, just stop me. And we can just stop right there, so we can let you do what needs to be done rather than having you just going what's going on kind of thing. All right, cool. Any questions for this one? Yes.
For example, let's say I want the camera to look at his feet and then pan up slowly. So
Yep, that's the next step. That's what we'll do next step. The next step we're going to change. We're going to do that. We're going to shift the camera from one look to another look. Yep. But the short answer is you can. So we fix the camera, we fix the character, and we will continue moving. For people, there are a couple of folks who are having trouble opening the project. Same thing. It just needs some time to open it up. But because of lack of time, I will just continue going. So what's happening here is we have the camera set up. And we have the character setup. The question earlier was, let's now switch cameras because we want the camera to be following Adam and then slowly look at the traction guard because we want the camera to pan, right? So for that, I'm going to be creating another virtual camera. I'm going to, of course, go to Cinemachine virtual camera, or I'm just going to duplicate this existing camera because it's just easier. So I'm going to duplicate that. And now this camera is again looking at Adam and following Adam and doing all of those things, but we don't want him to be looking at Adam anymore. We want that camera to be looking at the guard. We want the camera to follow Adam. We want the camera to be following Adam while he's walking, but the look where the camera should be focused on should be the traction guard. So I'm going to rename this follow cam to follow cam 2. And in the follow, I'm going to leave Adam look just as it is. But in the look at, I'm going to switch it to guard look. Now, with that camera selected, if I scrub, you'll notice that the camera is still following Adam. As you can see, the camera is still following Adam. But the look of that camera is on the traction guard. So now we have 2 different cameras. So one camera doing, which is just following Adam just the way it should be, where it's looking at the head or the back side of Adam. And then you have another camera that is looking and still following Adam, but looking at the traction guard. So how do you then blend between these 2 cameras? For that, this main camera, because like I said earlier, right, the camera, there's only one main camera. This is virtual cameras that exist. So we want to animate or modify the working of the main camera to switch between those 2 virtual cameras. So I'm going to drag the main camera and then drop it inside my timeline. When I drop it, it's going to ask me what kind of track do I want to do. We don't want to be creating an animation track. Instead, we want to be creating a Cinemachine track. So I'm going to select Cinemachine track. And that will now say, okay, I want to be doing something with the main camera. So with the Cinemachine track, I'm going to drag follow cam 1. The follow cam 1 I have over here. and drop it inside my timeline. So now I have a follow cam 1 over here. Similarly, I'm going to drag follow cam 2, drop it inside my timeline. So I have 2 cameras. So now if I look at this shot, you'll notice that there is one, the first shot is follow cam 1. So it's going to follow Adam, follow, and then it's going to swap to the other camera. But we don't want it to be like swapping. Instead, what we really want it to be doing is blending. So to blend is very difficult, actually very simple. Just drag the follow cam, blend it. So now what's happening is, you'll notice that the camera is now following Adam and then slowly blending over to the other one. So of course my cameras are too short. I have my total sequence of time is like 8 seconds over here. So I want my camera to be like right here. Follow Adam for a little while till maybe 2 seconds. Like 2 seconds is always following Adam and then slowly blending over there. Maybe that's too much. And these are the kind of iterations that you could do. You could just say, camera is following too fast, too slow. Change the blending, do whatever kind of iterations that you want, so from here to here Adam is following, and then blam, it just changes to the traction guard right there. You'll also notice, like when I told you, like the cameras or just the main camera just being passed around. Let's see, you can see that clearly. So this is your Cinemachine camera. Where is my virtual camera? Okay, I think this is, okay, I just wanted to show you how it gets passed around, but I guess the gizmo is turned off, but that's fine. So we'll have the camera, which is following Adam from, actually you can see it if I just look close by and then make it a little smaller. So you can see right there. Zoom in closer so you can see it much better. So you can see like there's 2 virtual cameras right there, and the main camera just gets passed around from one virtual camera to another. That's what happens. You have to zoom in really close for that to see it a little better, I guess. So now we have these 2 cameras, and now the blending of the cameras work. And this is what my blocking of the scene looks like. So I can just click play. So I have Adam walking towards the guard or towards the outpost. Whoa, why is it so only that much? Did I not move him all the way? Oh, I guess I didn't move him all the way. Weird. Okay, so I'll move Adam closer, and this is actually a fantastic thing because the camera is still always going to be following Adam regardless. So I can make any changes I want. I didn't really plan for this, but hey, whatever. So I'm going to, you can now edit the keyframes from right here, but this is bonus. You could also edit it from, if I click on this burger icon, that is right here, if I click on the burger icon, I can also edit it in the animation window. So I'm going to click on the animation window, and you can say that this keyframe, I possibly don't need that keyframe. Instead, I am going to click on record, and I'm going to say, hey Adam, not that one, that's a camera target, Adam right here. I want to say, hey Adam, move up till here. And you'll notice that the camera doesn't care. It's just going to follow Adam and do that. So you can notice that even though I changed my blocking, I decided like that's not what I want. My camera is like not going to battle it. It's just going to say, all right, you still want me to follow the head. You still want me to follow the or look at Adam's body, and I am just going to do exactly that. You can move Adam however and wherever you want. It really doesn't matter for the Cinemachine camera. So now it looks beautiful. So you have Adam walking up, and then the camera slowly blends over to look at the traction guard. Of course, the traction guard in the scene view is very, very dark because we don't have any lighting, but we will be adding lighting. So now the next step that typically happens in an animation field is like, okay, you have blocked the shots. The next thing is you want to bring in these shots into Maya. So with the same camera, the same lighting, you can bring all of whatever you have just done in Maya. Now, how do you do that? I'm not going to go into the Maya part, but I'm just going to show you how that is done. So I'm going to click on Add, and if I go to the recorder track, I can just add a recorder track, click on recorder. It'll create a recorder track for me. I'm going to right click and then add a recorder clip. Now with the recorder clip selected, you can tell how much of the animation that you have blocked is going to go into Maya. So you can select that. With the recorder clip selected, on the selected recorder, you can just say, I want to record the animation clip alone. Which means that any animation that is happening in this track will get recorded into a FBX file format. So with that selected, you can select animation clip. You can also select which game object you want to be recording. So in my case, I want to be recording the camera. I also want to be recording the recording Adam, and I also want to be recording Wasp. So for each of that, you're going to be adding a separate recorder track, and then you click on play. It will automatically record all of these animations, put it out as an FBX file format, which then can be imported into Maya. So the animators will know exactly where, because typically when animators are animating, they're animating to the camera, correct? So you can then bring those, the animators will then know what is the timing of the shot, where is the camera going to be looking like, and they're just going to start animating those characters. Once the characters are animated, you can then bring them back into Unity as an FBX file format. And that is what the round-tripping format is all about. So because I don't think a lot of people have Maya, and also that's not part of what I want to be showing you, but that's how DCC or the Maya or 3D Studio Max to Unity round-tripping works. You export out of Unity, bring it into Maya, you do your animation inside Maya, bring it inside Unity as FBX file format, it will just keep working the same way. So that's how it works. So I'm going to delete that track. So imagine there is another department. So my animation department has like, all right, I have finished animating these characters. So all I can do now is I don't need these blocked shots anymore. I can just delete these tracks. I'm going to select all of these. Bam, delete. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to drag Adam, Traption Guard, Wasp back into my characters. Say I want an animation clip. And I have the animation that was done by the animation department brought in as an animation file. So I'm going to go into, where is it? Animation. So in here, remember we wanted to do shot 40, which is the middle shot. So I'm going to go in there. And Adam has an animation in him. So I'm going to drag Adam into the Adam track. Going to drag the Traption Guard animation into the Traption Guard track. And I'm going to drag Wasp into the Wasp track. Now, because it's a FBX file format, the bone structure of it looks exactly the same. And even after I've added the animation, the camera, I did not have to change anything. The camera was always looking at the guard, always looking at the head, and now I have an Adam that's just kind of limping and walking towards the outpost, and the camera is also automatically swapping to look at the guard right there. So that's what I did. So to quickly recap, what I did was I recreated or duplicated a follow cam 2 from the follow cam 1. On follow cam 2, I said I want to be looking at the guard. I want to be following Adam still, but I want to be looking at the guard. And using and then I dragged the main camera into my timeline. I created a Cinemachine track. I dragged both follow cam 1 and follow cam 2 into my track and then blended those two cameras together. So now they are blended, the two cameras will now change focus or pan exactly like the way you want it. And once you have it panning, we can then use the recorder track to then export out the camera animation and the blocked out animation that you had recorded earlier, bring them into Maya, and then your animators can start animating it according to that camera shot and the blocking that you had done. Once you have done that, you can then bring that back into Unity as an FBX file format. Once you bring it into FBX, the camera will still be exactly the same. It's still the Cinemachine camera. You can still make any changes you want based on the animation that you have gotten in. and then you can just drag those animations into a new track, because you can just delete the older track which is just used for blocking. So that's what happened in this cycle. So you can go ahead and do it. So again, if I'm going too fast, please do stop me. Any questions on this currently? Yes. Yes. So in the following steps, we will be working on the depth of field, like how the focus can also be changed.
What about easing in and changing the controls for, like, if I want to blend from fast to quick?
Yep.
Blend very quick.
So there's two ways you could do it. Actually, I kind of forgot about another thing, but there's two ways you could do the blending. One is, of course, you can do this traditional blending that you have right here. You also have complete control over how the blending itself happens. So you have, if you select manual blending curves, you have options of how this curve of the blending is going to be working. In fact, you can also create keyframes here and tell, okay, I want it to be like really slow or really fast initially and then slow down. You could do all those kinds of, you have full control over how the blending itself works. Another thing I also kind of forgot to tell is, beginning with our work with Disney, we also created some lenses for you. So if you have a 21mm lens, 35mm lens, 58mm, just like real life, you can select that too. I actually wanted a 58mm lens because that looks cool. And same thing for this camera. So you have a nice 58mm lens over there. Of course, these are all just presets. You can of course create your own lenses too if you want to. So that's there. Any other question? Yes. Yeah. You could, but if you're animating it, if you're animating the camera, like you're saying, like keyframing the camera. If you're animating the empty object, yeah, you could do that too. But that means you're losing control over. So let's say the empty game object is something that you're not going to be using, but the guard is going to be the same guard, and you can possibly, like during the course of work, just say, okay, I don't want the guard to be standing on the left-hand side of the outpost. I want him to move to the right-hand side of the outpost, and the camera will just look at it all the time. But if you do that to the empty game object, then that won't happen. You could do that too, no problem. But that's kind of like you're rigging the camera. But you could do that too. There's no reason why you cannot do that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Yep. We'll be doing that next. In the coming up steps, we'll be doing that. Yep. To do lighting, and then from lighting, we'll just take a break. Maybe like 10 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So we have. Is anyone still working on it? If you need time. No. Cool. So what we have done so far is have Adam blocked out the animation. We have created the camera. We used the round tripping methodology to then bring the animation back into Unity, and then use the camera to use the timeline to then swap the animations out. So we have done that. So clearly there's a problem right now, which is the camera itself. There is no lighting inside the scene, and that's what we'll be doing right now. So for lighting, we'll have to turn back the lighting option on. So this is just purely on the scene view. So if I select that lighting option, then you will start seeing some lighting inside the scene. Yes, we need the lights off. Thank you for lighting. So we have this. We have just one light in the entirety of the scene, and that is this one directional light. And similar to how the animation department, for example, was working on this one timeline, or on this one scene, we have the lighting department working on a completely different scene. So you're not stepping on each other's toes. So we have the lighting scene right there, and by selecting the directional light that is under episode set lighting, you can play around with the directional light and then rotate it. Of course, directional light being directional light, the position doesn't matter. But when you rotate it, then you'll start seeing some shadows and changes and whatnot. So you can say, okay, what is the lighting I like? So maybe this is something I like, I prefer, or whatever. But that's not the only lighting that is you want to be doing. Because one of the main things that you want to be doing is creating an environmental effect for Adam, right? With HDRP, the way lighting itself works as an environmental effect has completely changed. We have introduced something called volume settings. So if you go under scene settings, you find something called volume. Now volume is just a game object that contains the volume component attached to it. So there's a volume component attached to it. So you can, in fact, I can remove that component. As soon as I remove that component, you'll notice that I have no skybox, no ground, no nothing. It's just like completely dark. On this volume, I can add this component called volume, and that will create the volume script on it. And in the profile, and if anyone has worked with post-processing stack, it's very similar to that. So on the volume, I'm just going to create a new volume. And now you have volume overrides that you can start adding. So first things first, I want to have a skybox. So I'm going to click on add component overrides. And in here you have a few options. So I'm going to add a visual environment, which is what will allow me to add sky and fog. So I'm going to select and enable all the sky and fog. On the sky, I'm going to select I want a procedural sky. As soon as I select procedural sky, nothing happens. And then on a fog type, I'm just going to create volumetric fog, and nothing happens. The reason why nothing happens is because we need to add the respective component overrides for that visual environment. So I'm going to add component overrides. I want a, procedural sky, because that's what I selected over here. Procedural sky, select all. Oh, crap. So this volume, I've completely forgot about that. This volume needs to be set as a global volume, because volume in Unity now works very similar to post-processing in that depending on which part your camera is inside the scene, you can blend the volume. So you can have like at one point I want the, like let's say you're in an interior shot and then you're moving out from the interior to an exterior shot, which is essentially having a character move out from a house to outside. So you can have a different volume settings inside that house and a different volume settings when you go outside the house. So you could do those kind of blending. So that's why we have this option here called global. When you select global, then it's a global setting, which means that that is the default setting. And then you can create other volumes that will then override this volume if you want. That's kind of how it works. So I have the volume as global selected, and now you'll start seeing a procedural sky. And you can play around with the color. So I can just say, okay, I want a reddish color. Ground needs to be a different color. I can also add another override called volumetric fog, which will then create fog in my scene. So I can just say how much fog I want, change the color of the fog, and do all those kinds of stuff. And of course, you have options for the shadows itself, like the resolution of the shadow. So I can click on Add Component Overrides. I can select HD Shadow Settings, and that will then give me options for figuring out the resolution on the cascade count of the shadow. Now, because this is a profile, so this profile is nothing but just a asset file. So if I in fact open it up in the Explorer, you'll notice that this is a asset file. And what an asset file means is that this volume settings that I have made can be passed around to different projects also, because it just has self-contained data about that volume. And so you can have like another department working on a completely different project working on this volume settings, and just pass on the asset to your file and it'll just work just like that. So with the volume selected, I actually created a very nice volume that I think looks pretty cool. So I'm going to select this circle selector, and I'm going to select this 001 episode set lighting profile, which is exactly the same thing, which contains the HD shadow settings, procedural sky, visual sky, and volumetric light controller and volumetric fog. But it just, I just worked on it to make it look pretty. That's all I did. So we have the volumetric, that's how the volume of this works. So we have the volume done. The next thing you also want to do is have post-processing, but for now I'm just going to turn off post-processing because I'll work on that in the next step, but I'm just going to select post volume and then just uncheck it so that we see how lighting itself works individually. So post-processing is turned off. For lighting, I need some light inside my outpost, just like over here. So I already have some spotlights that I had set up. So I'm going to select this exterior air lock lights, drag and drop them inside my episode scene lighting. Now you'll notice that these are just spotlights, and now my scene is lit. And if you look at the lights itself, they're just like individual lights which are just beaming from each direction, and they look pretty good. The big change with the lighting inside Unity with HDRP is that now lights are measured in lumens and in candela, which is huge, because now with lumens and candela, that is the standard when it comes to any kind of lighting. So regardless of which place you're going to be putting your experience or your movie in, the lighting will look exactly the same. Earlier with the lighting, it used to go from there was an intensity, and the intensity used to go from 0 to 1, and that meant nothing, because 0 to 1 is what? 0 to 1 units, but that meant really nothing. So with lumens, you now exactly know what is the like industry standard when it comes to lighting itself. So we have lighting in there. Yes. It's only for HDRP. Other lights are still there. Yeah, the default rendering pipeline is not going away anywhere. We're still using that, but with HDRP, if you're using HDRP, then lumens is what we'll be using. Lumens and candela. Yes. That's the next thing I'm going to show you. So this light has a little beam on it, and you don't like the beam, so no, I'm just showing you. So let's say you don't like the beam. You like the beam, but you don't like the beam. I don't want the light beam. So we'll just do that right now. So I have this lighting set up over here. So when I'll just play it right now, and you can see that Adam is walking there. Lighting looks pretty good, but there's a problem. One problem is that what's happening over here? Oh yeah, I did this. Oh, okay, right there. So there you go, much better. So that was the curve that I was showing you. So that's why you got that jump. But you have this lighting here. But in here, I want to have a little bit of a lighting that has a rim effect on Adam, because that's what lighting artists is all about. So I'm going to create a spotlight. I'm going to go to game object, light. I'm going to create a spotlight from right there. Create a spotlight. All right. So I want the spotlight to be in front of Adam, so that when the camera is looking at Adam from behind, I see a nice rim effect around Adam. Now I could move the lighting. I can rotate it, and then I could do all those kinds of things to position the light, and that's very painful because in 3D space, like I'm already off, it's like very difficult. So easy way to do it is, let's say I want the light to light up Adam from this part. So I want my spotlight to be looking at Adam from right there. So to do that, I'm going to select that spotlight, move my scene view to whichever point I want my light to be hitting Adam from. And I'm going to go to game object, align with view. When I do that, automatically my spotlight is going to align to that view. Of course, it's looking at his pelvis right now, so it's a bad lighting. So maybe move it up to here, and I'll do it again. So game object, align with view, and now there's a lighting that's just bright on Adam but from behind it looks pretty good. So that's with the rim, with the rim. I think that's like extremely bright. So we'll with the intensity selected, I will just reduce the intensity down to maybe like something that I like. That looks okay. And then of course I can also use temperature. So I can select, instead of just straight up color, I can say what is the temperature that of my spotlight. So I can use color temperature. I'll make it a little warm, just like that. Actually, you know what? That looks, yeah, I think that looks good. And then to answer your question, which is, how do you then not have a beam of light, but make it more like fuzzy, like have a fuzzy effect to it? To do that, there is under features, you have an option here called additional settings. So you select additional settings and magically you have additional settings show up at the bottom. And under here, you have a volumetric dim. So if I select volumetric dim, that will then reduce the intensity of the spotlight based on volume. Like it's as if like light is diffusing over volume, and that's how you do it. So, right? Cool. So I have my volumetric dim. Same thing, I also want so I have a nice rim. So that's a rim I have. Oops. I also want this. I also want a spotlight on top of this traption guard, because my camera is now going to be focusing on that. I want some light on top of him. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate the spotlight, Control D, or right click spotlight. Oops. And going to move my scene to right here, and then do the same thing. So game object align with view. And now I have a spotlight that is not exactly on the traption guard. I'm right here. So game object align with view. And maybe it's, yeah, that looks, so it's like directly on the spot, on the guard. And now you can see that the guard is now lit by himself. Maybe change the intensity a bit up, reduce the temperature, make it warmer. Then I also have the indirect multiplier. The indirect multiplier is the number of bounces that your light is going to have. But I don't care too much about the bounces right now. But I have this rim light on Adam and the spotlight on top of our character, and that's pretty much how lighting works inside Unity. So quickly to recap, what I did was I went to the lighting settings. I went to volume. And I showed you how volume inside Unity works. So you have specific control over how your sky is going to look like, how your fog is going to look like, how your shadows are going to be rendered. So you can add a volume component to it, or you can just select the profile called 0001 episode set lighting profile, and that will create the profile for you. And then with that, with your environment selected, with your environment lighting fine, then you can just bring in the EXT air lock lights, which just contains like some 6 spotlights just placed around this post. Bring that into your lighting scene, and it'll automatically light this up. And then you can create 2 new spotlights, play around with the intensity and the temperature of it, and then create the rim light and the spotlight on top of our characters. With the spotlight selected, because you don't like the volume with the beam, I'll keep calling you don't like the beam guy. So you can then click on additional settings, and then use the volumetric dim to then reduce the beam, to make the beam more diffused. So that's it. After this, I think we have like another 45 minutes before we should be done. Do you want to take a break, or do you want to take a break? Okay, we'll take a break like 7 minutes, and then we'll be back on time, because we don't have a lot of time. So we'll just be back on time to continue with this. All right. Any questions on this part so far? Yes. Yep. So if you don't have volume as global selected, like in the volume, you have a volume as global selected, then on this volume, you can add a collider, a box collider, or any kind of a mesh collider, and that will then that volume will be contained inside that volume. That's how you do the interior and exterior shot. So in the interior shot, you can have a volume that is inside a particular collider. It could be any shape. It could be like a mesh collider with like weird shapes. And when you move out, you can just do the blending of different volume. The camera should be inside the collider. So whichever collider the camera is inside, it's going to have that volume in there. Yep. Yep. Any other questions? No? Okay, break time. So it's 11:57 dot. We will be back at 12:04. Yeah? Yeah. 12:04. This is dragging them in, and how lighting in Unity has changed with HDRP because of the settings which are more normalized. All right, so now that we have lighting, what is the next one? Next one, post-processing. All right. Typically, in any situation, post-processing and lighting work hand to hand. Like people are having post-processing and lighting and tweaking both at the same time. And you could do that in Unity also. But just for a more sequential manner, I am just going to enable post-processing. So under my lighting setting, I'm going to go to post volume. And I'm going to turn on that game object, which was originally turned on. I had turned it off. And very, very similar to the volume settings that we had, post-process volume also works very, very similarly. It has a profile that you can create, and it's just an asset file that you can then pass around to different projects. And similar to volume, it will also be able to blend between different volumes. So if your camera is in one volume and then moves on to a different volume, the post-processing will actually blend, which is very cool. So for now, so I'm just going to create a new profile. And then on the new profile, it'll just create a new post-profile volume. I have a bunch of effects, so I'll add an effect. On Unity, I can first create bloom, which is everyone's favorite effect. Select that, and then if I change the intensity, then you'll notice that post-process works all again in real time. So I can change the intensity, I can change the color and whatnot, and whatever that you're doing with post-processing is in real time. Similarly, I'm going to add effect. The MVP, of course, is color grading. So when I select color grading, I'm going to select all. And you have modes such as high definition range, which is what is there by default. The tone mapping is in ACES, which is the Academy Color Encoding Scheme, which is like the standard when it comes to color encoding itself. So I'll select that, so your movie automatically looks cinematic. Then you can play around with color and what kind of tint you want, and this is all in real time, which is awesome. You can play with saturation. Yeah. I don't have a good eye for color, so sorry about that. But I can also select the hue versus saturation and just say, okay, I want it to have a more reddish color or whatever. But you could play around with these effects. There is also a bunch of things like you have depth of field, you have grain. I'll specifically talk about depth of field next. But you have depth of field, grain, lens distortion, motion blur, ambient occlusion. I think that's also something that's always required. So I have ambient occlusion, and play around with all of those post-processing effects. I also created similar to this. This looks pretty okay, but I also created a post-process profile earlier. So if I select this circle selector, I can select this post-process asset called 001 episode set profile, which has a better setting. So this is what it used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. I'm going to select that. And this has the same thing. There's a color grading and ambient occlusion, grain, and some motion blur and whatnot. So this looks slightly better. So you can see that this is what the post-processing with the light looks like, which is pretty cool. All right, so next we want to talk about the post-processing of depth of field in particular, because we want to have the focus set on Adam initially, and then the depth of field then slowly blends into looking at our traction guard. So how do I do that? So depth of field, as in real life, is controlled by your camera. So on the follow cam 1 and 2, I'm selecting the follow cam. In my hierarchy, I'm going to select the follow cam in my hierarchy. And in the inspector, all the way down, I have an extensions option. Under extensions, I can select and add the Cinemachine post-processing extension to that to that camera. When I add that, Now, you can have specific post-processing that is only going to work on that camera. So you can have a global post-processing effect, and then you can have a post-processing that is not global, but it is going to work only for the camera, and any post-processing that you add over there is going to be an override. Okay? So I'm going to create a new post-processing profile, and I'm going to add effect called depth of field. So I'm going to add depth of field. Now the cool thing with this one also is when I select this option here called focus tracks target, the depth of field will always be looking at the target that I have set at the look at in the camera. So whatever the camera is looking at, the depth of field or the post processing will kind of give priority to whatever it is looking at. So I'm going to set that up. And then I'm going to select all in the depth of field, and you can already notice that there's a little bit of depth of field right there. So I can play around with it. So I can say, okay, I want this aperture to be here, focal length to be there. So you can see now, just to put it on full screen, so you can see, oops. You just need to scrub the timeline because it just resets to its original thing because of that. All right. Whoop, you can't do it in full screen. All right. Video. So you can see it's slightly better. Okay, so you can see that everything around here has blurred out, and that's going to remain the same throughout. Because right here, you can see that this gets into focus, and that's only in focus because the follow cam 2 has no depth of field. So just looking at it right away. But you can see that the depth of field is now blending, and it's just fading out. But you don't want it to fade out because this is still in focus. We only want the focus on here. So by selecting follow cam 2, I'm going to add the same extension, post-processing. Select focus tracks target because I want that depth of field to be looking at that target the entire time. Like that. Create a new profile. Add effect, and it will complain like, hey, focus track targets only works if you have depth of field. Like, yeah, I'll add that. So add that. Still complaining about that. That's because depth of field needs everything turned on. So I'm going to turn everything on. And now I can play with the, okay, you can see the depth of field in effect right here. So you can see that right there. Maybe I should move it all the way to here. And you can play around with how much focus that particular camera needs to have. So that camera is going to focus on our traction guard. Follow cam 2 is going to be focusing on Adam. And because of the blending, you'll notice that there is a very smooth, very, very nice blending that happens. So you can see, so right now this is all out of focus, and it slowly gets into focus on the other side. So that's how you do depth of field using Cinemachine and post-processing together. So to recap, what I did was I went to my scene settings. I selected post volume. Because post volume is very similar to the volume of that I said earlier about the skybox volume. So I created a post profile. You could create your own post processing profile, or or just select the 001 episode set post profile, which has a very nice profile in there. Showed you how color grading, ambient occlusion, grain, or whatever works. And then I selected follow cam and follow cam 2. I added this extension called Cinemachine post processing that then adds the Cinemachine post process profile to the camera. And in here, I added the depth of field effect by creating a new profile. And with the depth of field on those both set correctly, I can now have a nice depth of field happening between those two cameras. So that's this cycle. Before I get there, any questions on this one in particular? No? Cool. All right. So I think a lot of people were excited by depth of field. They're like, oh, it's cool. So it's pretty cool. And I always find that exciting too. All right. So the very last thing. So we have the scene. One thing I kind of forgot to tell earlier is we were all working inside the beat system, right? So we were working inside a timeline that was in beat 01. Now this beat 01 is controlled by the master timeline. So if I select this drop down, if I go to master timeline, you'll notice that this is the beat 01, which is a control track. So if I double click inside it, this is what it has. And our track is about 5, rather. Now you see this darkened area, 0 to 5 seconds, and the rest of it is dark. And that's because in the master timeline, our track is only set to be 5 seconds long. So if I set it, it's only 5 seconds long. So if I expand that, you'll notice that now it is just automatically snapping to whatever the underlying timeline's time is. So because of this powerfulness of the control track, you can start editing right inside Unity itself. So here you have a track that you have where it's about 8 seconds long, and let's say you're like, you know what, I just want to cut it over here. I don't want the rest of it. You don't have to delete those tracks or any of those things. With your main control track, which should be right here in the master track, you can just say, you know what, I only want this much, just cut it. So because it's the master track, whatever I play will only play up till this point. So this means that you could automatically start doing non-linear editing while you are working with the game, with your film itself. Additionally, you can create multiple tracks, which is what we saw at the very, very beginning. We had 3 beats, right? So you can have like 3 beats, and you can just like align them, and you can also like move them around, saying like, yeah, Adam is walking, maybe I just want to have a cut shot of another guy looking at some place. And that's just the idea that you just got. Just move the timeline back and forth, and it'll just sequence it automatically, which is awesome. All right, so we have this timeline, the master timeline in here. So I'm going to double click it, and you can see that whatever is the master timeline going to, whatever the master timeline is trimmed into is what the beat will also highlight. So it's just going to say only from here to here is it going to be playing. It's just for your own reference. It doesn't mean that this is disabled or anything, just for your reference alone. Okay, so we have the master timeline, and you might be asking, how do I create the master timeline? I'm sure everyone asking that. It's quite easy. Clicking on add, you're going to add a control track. On the control track, you can name it whatever you want. Right click, add from game object, and this will give you options of where you can locate the timeline object that you had just created. So my beat 01, right there, beat 01 is the object that I care about. And if I select that, if I double click that, now this track now controls. I can actually mute this. You can mute a track by right clicking on mute, or click on the M button. I'll mute this track, and now this track is controlling the other timeline. So you can create multiple control tracks how much ever you want, and have nested timelines inside your scene. All right, so we have that. All right, so we understood how control track works. The final thing that you want to be doing is record it. Like, yeah, it's all in the editor, but you actually want to publish this into a sequence of images, or you want to have it as an MP4 file. If you want to do like your dailies rather than doing sequence, you can just publish an MP4 file. So to do that, click on add, and we're going back to our recorder track. Now the recorder track is the same recorder track that we used for the round tripping, but this time it can also be used for exporting it as a image sequence or a MP4. So to do that, right click, add a recorder clip, and you can select how much of your movie you want to record. So you can say, I only want to record the first 4 seconds because that's what the director wants, or you can record the entire thing if that's what you want. Select record clip. In the selected recorder, you have a few options. You have animation clip, which is what you would use for round tripping, and then you have movie. If I select movie, then you have an option of exporting as it as an MP4 or as a WebM format. If you select movie, then inside the capture mode, you do want to be capturing the game view. In the output resolution, because it's an MP4, you can output up to a 4K resolution. And then the quality is high. You do, of course, want to capture the audio. But if you select the recorder as an image sequence, then your output resolution will go up to 8K. So you can export up to a 8K resolution. And then a lot of times I've seen animation studios where they export to a 8K resolution and then just lower the resolution down to a 4K, just resize it, because they then get like super high quality. But you can export it up to a 8K resolution if it's an image sequence. Another thing that I often get a question on is, and this is usually from compositors saying like, can I output mattes, or can I output like, whatever? And I'd say like, separate layers. First, my initial response will always be, why do you want to do that? Because whatever you're seeing inside Unity is your final output. You could do your post-processing right inside there. So why do you even want to do that? But if you still want to do it, my recommendation would be, inside the capture, you can capture a specific camera. So you can have your camera configured in such a way that it is only looking at a certain layer of your scene. So if I select the camera, main camera, then you can have it look only at a specific layer inside your scene, and then have the recorder only output whatever is the camera, whatever is the current camera looking at. Which means you could have layers, and then you could then output it as a, of course, you can also output the image sequence as JPEG, PNG, or an EXR format. So then once you have EXR, then you could go out to an external compositing software and do additional compositing and color correction if you feel like. So that's how you do it. So I'm going to select movie for now, make it MP4. Output resolution, I'm just going to say 720 for now. And then all you have to do is click on record. Yes. Audio track? Like add audio? Yeah, of course. Sorry, you can add audio. So click on add audio track. And inside the audio, you can pretty much grab any wave file. I don't believe I have any audio files in here, but you can just click on, yeah, let me see if I have any audio. Oh, I don't have any audio, but you can bring in any MP3 wave file or whatever and just bring that in. Yeah. 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 I'm not sure. That's a good question. Let's see. The movie, you only have the capture audio. I need to figure that out. That's a good question. Because I don't remember what we did with Baymax. Not sure. I'll get back to you on that. I'll definitely research and get back to you on that. Good question though. Yeah. Yeah. So again, the question is why? Why would you do that? But if you could. So you have a particular camera that is just following the main camera just as it is. Yeah, and then you could just say, yeah, now this camera is only looking at the Z depth, and that's part of the post processing. It's an extension of the post processing profile. So because post processing is essentially applied on top of whatever the camera is looking at. So you can then say, okay, the post processing profile, just look at the Z depth alone, and then just render that out. But again, I would say why? Why would you do that? That's why I even mentioned it, saying if you need it, that's how you do it. Yes. Yeah. Yep. No. So unfortunately, I don't have audio in here, but you can do like entire audio editing right inside Timeline, because the audio track itself works very, very similar to any other track. So you can like loop the audio. You could slow down the audio, speed up the audio. What about the what? There is an audio mixer inside Unity built right into it. So if you go to assets, no, game object audio, you have that's not where it is. Yep, it plays very well with Timeline. I think you create a mixer by right clicking here, create. There you go, audio mixer. So you have a nice audio mixer, and you can, I don't have any audio in this file, unfortunately, but I can show it to you separately if you, later after this. So you create an audio mixer, and you could go like, incidentally or anecdotally, another field engineer of inside Unity is called Sharat Chandra. He does VJing using Unity. So he just grabs all of the audio source and then starts and creates some amazing psychedelic effects using the particle effects and the audio, and has the particles syncing with the audio. So it does some pretty cool stuff with it. But yeah, you can do it. Yes. So if I select a beat, the control track, you have an option here called speed multiplier. So I can say I want to slow it down to 0.5. And now all of a sudden, this expanded because it's slowed down. And now if I hit play, now it's all slowly moving. So it's all, or you can also speed it up and make it like a Charlie Chaplin movie. There you go. So now it's going very fast. So you could do all of that using timeline. Yep, cool. All right, so and then finally, now that we have everything except for the one question I'll ask him, I'll figure it out. So if I hit play, actually I think I know the answer for your question. But if I just hit play, it's just going to take a little bit of time. Now you'll notice one thing, which is this: the playback is possibly a little slower than what you see when I click on the timeline. When I click on the timeline, it's a little smoother and it's a little more faster. But when I click on with the recorder track selected, when I click on play, it's slightly slow. The only reason for that is because it's just writing those frames to disk. So that is the only time it is taking. So if you have a fast, solid state drive, then it'll be faster. If you have a very slow disk, then it'll be slower. But it's only the time that it takes for it to write from Unity, creating that image and putting it on the disk is the only time it is taking. And that's why when you're clicking play with the recorder track turned on, it's going to be slightly slow. And I think I'm done recording. So if I go to my Explorer, go to recordings, I have a movie right here. It's an MP4 file. And that's the movie I just created. It's just chugged a little slowly because of media player. But if I play it again, it should be cached. There you go. So this is what I created from starting to end, bringing a character in, blocking out the shots with the T-pose character that we have cameras that are going to be looking at a particular point or a particular joint of that character. Replace that character with the animated part by round-tripping it. You're round-tripping your camera and your character into Maya or 3D Studio Max, bringing it back in. The camera will be exactly the same. You don't need to do anything. Maybe you can change the settings if you some of the settings in the virtual camera if you feel like. Then you added some lights to your scene by just adding some spotlights. You also worked with the volume settings of your scene where you created some skyboxes and fog and some shadow settings. And then we also worked with the post-processing profile to make it a little more cinematic. Then we also worked with the depth of field where we added it to each camera, the follow cam 1 and follow cam 2, so that and we also learned how to blend between the depth of fields. And then I showed you how to do editing very quickly. So using control track, you can quickly just click edit your shots, do non-linear editing on the fly, and then record your clip. So it's a very straightforward process, and that's the entire point of it. It's a if you want to create a movie of this quality on a traditional rendering pipeline, it's probably going to take at least 2 days or a day with the full render output. But with here in 2.5 hours, we're done with breaks, 7-minute breaks. So that's about it. I think we're awesomely 4 minutes before time, which is very good. Now, if you have any questions, I'll be here. I know there's a few people who are having trouble with the project, so I'll also be hanging around in here and solve each and everyone's problem about this project. Or if you have any other questions, we can also ask that. All right, any questions on this so far? No? Yes. You can. So that's part of the post-processing profile itself. You can get those passes, but I would again say why.
Do some changes in composing software
You
like Nuke or
Yeah, so you can do it. So with the post-processing profile, you could create. There's like it's not part of it's not part of the Unity package itself, but in the GitHub we have a shaders that does this for you, where you can get like separate Z depth or occlusion passes and whatnot, and you just apply it to the camera, and then just say the camera is only going to be looking at it. We already kind of have it in here. So if I go to my game view. If I go, actually not to game view, under my scene view, I can just say, I only want to look at the light maps. And that'll only show me the light maps. So I can only say, I only want to look at the albedo, which I don't seem to have anything. Or I only want to look at what is emitting. I don't think I have anything that's emitting, so that's not sure showing up. But you can look at, it's already doing it behind the scenes anyway. All you have to do, all that shaders does in the GitHub repository is just expose this. And so you can have your camera say, I only want the camera to be looking at a particular pass, and it'll just do that.
that is actually, suppose camera looking is different, that concept. But the reflection pass, suppose if I want to control the reflection in the composting,
You could do
once
that.
render the sequence.
You could do that. So with reflection probes that is available inside Unity, you get reflection that is available. So you can then get that out as a separate pass if you want to. But again, my question is why? Why would you could do everything inside Unity? But
That all you said, I guess.
But that's why I said, like, all of it is available for you to do on an external post, like a Nuke or After Effects. You could totally do that. And there's also provisions for you to do it. But I'd say, like, everything you can do it inside Unity, so why bother? But you can do it.
It's
Yes, yeah.
I'll try.
Yeah.
Achha, hello,
Yes.
one question I have is, can you, all these features are available
where-
on the
there
personal
you-
edition?
I'm sorry?
This personal edition
Yes.
also has all these features?
Yes, all of this is available in personal edition. None of it is locked, feature locked. So HDRP is free. Everything is. In fact, that's all on the mission of Unity to democratize development. We don't want to lock anyone out. Everything is available in person. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. He had a question. Yeah.
Pipeline, did they manage to actually get in Alembic streams inside
Yep.
as animation clips?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
is it like the simple drag and drop? Like
Drag and drop. Yeah, I in fact made I'll show it to you later, but I in fact made a short film using Alembic characters alone. So you can bring in Alembic. It's not part of the editor, but it's a plugin that you just need to get into Unity. And it's provided by Unity ourselves. But you just put that plugin in, and now your timeline will have an Alembic track. I can just drag the ABC files in there, and it'll just work just the way you expect
okay.
it to
Is
be.
there a performance difference between how that works and how?
Alembic is, yes, Alembic is traditionally very heavy. So a FBX file might be like 1 megabyte, then the same Alembic would be like 15 megabytes. Performance-wise, no, I did not see a difference, but my computer is fairly beefy. Just so you know, I have a 1060 NVIDIA GeForce and 16 GB of RAM. So it's a pretty good machine. And on that, I barely felt anything. And my file was very, very heavy on Alembic. And I'll show it to you after this. I can show you what I did. Someone else had a question. Yes.
Can we render only character background, transparency background?
Yeah, you can. You can. So if you, again, using layers in the camera,
Okay.
the main camera, you can have your character put in a separate layer and have your culling mask only look at the layer of that character. And Unity, since I think just this year, we have like transparency supported in videos also. So you can have like nice transparent videos. Sure. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? There are no more. I'll still be around. In fact, I'll be around even tomorrow. But I think I think this gives you a good overview of how to make a film inside Unity, like from scratch. Every scene is a separate department, and every timeline is controlled individually, so you can go crazy with that. And and one of the cool things with this itself is, from the very beginning, you're always in 3D. You're never like drawing something in paper and then visualizing it, or doing that kind of thing. You're right away from the beginning in 3D, which is a very powerful thing. So that's about it. So it's 12:47. I'm kind of on time. Thank you so much, and hope you have a fantastic Unite going forward. And I also hope, and this is a challenge I'm putting it out to all of you folks here, next year at Unite, I at least want a few of you, I'd say like 5 of you, to feature, have a made with Unity product that we would love to feature and have you speak about your experience at Unite. So 2019, I want a few paper submissions. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.